I never liked Christmas. Not anymore. It used to mean something. Family gathered around, the noise of laughter, the warmth of togetherness. But after all the years, all the heartache, it felt like a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. My relationship with my son, Xavier, had been distant for years. His marriage to Iris Landon didn't help matters. I always felt like she was pushing me out, manipulating him, pulling him away from me. But there it was, a letter in the mail one cold December afternoon. "Hey, Dad, we're hosting Christmas this year. I would love to have you here. It'll be great to see you. Love, Xavier." I stared at the letter for a long time, my mind racing. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to spend another Christmas with Iris, the woman who had made my life miserable in more ways than I could count. But what else could I do? I hadn't seen Xavier in months. He was my son, after all. Maybe this was a chance to fix things between us. Maybe it wasn't. As I sat there in the quiet of my living room, my thoughts were interrupted by the phone ringing. It was Xavier. I almost didn't pick up, but I did anyway. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice unsure. "Did you get the invite? I really hope you can make it this year." I sighed, trying to keep my tone even. "I got it, son. But I've been thinking about it. It's a lot, and I don't know if it's the right time." Xavier's voice faltered. "I get it, Dad. But there's something I need to tell you. Iris is pregnant." The words hit me harder than I expected. Pregnant. A grandchild. I hadn't thought about it. Not really. And now the news settled over me like a cold weight. Xavier's voice continued in the background, something about how excited he was, how they were preparing for the future. I barely heard him. My mind was racing. This was it, wasn't it? This was the moment that would change everything. "Hey there, my wonderful friends. I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for tuning in today. It truly means the world to me that you're here. I'd love to know, what time is it where you're watching from? I always love hearing from you all. It would make my day if you could give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Let's continue." I didn't want to face Iris. I didn't want to face the chaos of her relatives coming over. I didn't want to pretend that everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I could feel my chest tightening at the thought of it all. But at the same time, I knew Xavier needed me. I spent the rest of the night turning it over in my head. Should I go? Should I try to make things right? But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Iris had always been manipulative. I had no evidence, but I was sure she had some plan in motion, some way of pulling Xavier further away from me. I didn't want to get tangled in it again. So I made the decision. I'd go to my cabin in the Catskills, away from all the noise, the confusion. I wasn't going to play along this year. Still, as I packed my bag, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was walking away from something important. Was I abandoning my son? Or was I saving myself from something I couldn't handle? If I'm being honest with myself, I was torn between staying and facing my family or escaping for some peace. If you were me, would you choose to stay and face the chaos? Or would you run away for a little quiet? I'd really love to know what you'd do. I thought I had made the right decision when I left for the cabin in the Catskills. The quiet was exactly what I needed. The crackling fire, the snow falling softly outside, the peace. No family drama, no manipulations, just me and the isolation I'd come to crave. Christmas was still a few days away, and I thought I could use this time to clear my head. That was until Christmas Eve. I was just finishing dinner, a simple meal of steak and potatoes, when my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Xavier. I wasn't expecting him to call, and something about the urgency in his tone made my heart skip a beat. "Dad, I—" Xavier's voice cracked, and I could tell he was trying to keep it together. "I have some bad news." I leaned against the counter, bracing myself. "What happened?" "Iris. She's had a miscarriage," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's devastated, Dad. I don't know what to do." I froze. The room felt like it was closing in on me. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. A miscarriage. My mind raced. Was this the truth? Or was this just another one of Iris's schemes? I'd known Iris for years. She was good at getting sympathy, at playing the victim to manipulate Xavier. But this felt different. There was real pain in Xavier's voice. The desperation, the confusion. I didn't know what to think. Should I trust him? Should I believe the worst in Iris, as I always had? Or should I show up for my son, despite my doubts? "Is she okay?" I finally managed to ask. The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth. I hadn't been there for Xavier in a long time, but something about the rawness of his voice made me want to help, to fix what had been broken. "She's not okay, Dad," Xavier said, his voice trembling. "She needs me, but I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can trust her anymore. Everything's falling apart." I could hear him struggling to hold back tears. Iris had always been in control, manipulating situations to suit her needs. But now, it sounded like the control was slipping from her hands. Still, I didn't trust her. I didn't trust any of it. But what was I supposed to do? Leave him alone to deal with all of this? Could I let my son suffer because I didn't trust his wife? The guilt of abandoning him all those years crept up again. He needed me, whether he knew it or not. "I'm coming back, son," I said, my voice firm despite the unease in my gut. "I'll be there." The phone call ended with a quick exchange of words, and I sat there in the silence of the cabin, trying to process everything. Iris was the last person I wanted to see. I was sure she was pulling strings behind the scenes, trying to make herself the center of attention. But Xavier, he was my son. He needed me. I packed my things slowly, the decision weighing heavily on me. Was I making the right choice by going back? Or was I walking straight into another one of Iris's traps? Either way, I knew I couldn't just sit here. The drive back to New York was long, my mind racing the entire time. I couldn't shake the thought of Xavier, caught in the middle of all this. He was confused, hurting, and I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him face it alone. Do you think Iris was really grieving? Or was she just using the situation to control my son? When I arrived back in New York, the city felt colder, quieter than I remembered. The streets were still busy with holiday shoppers, but everything seemed muffled, distant. I hadn't been back to Xavier's apartment in months, and the thought of walking through that door again made my chest tighten. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I couldn't back out now. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I knocked. Still nothing. I tried calling Xavier's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice steady, but the worry creeping through. "Xavier, it's Dad. I'm here. Open the door." But as I stood there, staring at the silent building, a sense of unease began to creep in. This wasn't like him. Xavier had always been the kind of guy to keep in touch, to check in when something important was going on. But now, he was nowhere to be found. I stood there for what felt like an eternity before deciding to try again. I made my way around the building to the back entrance. Maybe he was in there, Or maybe they had moved somewhere else. But when I reached the back of the building, my eyes caught something strange. A car I didn't recognize parked in the alley. A black sedan, sleek and unremarkable. But its presence felt too deliberate, too out of place for this quiet street. I tried calling Xavier again, but the call went unanswered. I walked up to the front door and knocked, harder this time, but there was still no response. The growing tension in my gut began to turn into frustration. I tried the door. It was unlocked. It shouldn't have been, but it was. Something was wrong. I stepped inside, the silence in the apartment overwhelming. There were no signs of life, no lights on, no voices in the other room, nothing. It was like the place had been abandoned. I wandered through the rooms, calling out for Xavier and Iris, but my words echoed back at me. No answer. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out. A text from Xavier. We moved. We're staying somewhere else for a while. That was it. No explanation. Just a statement. My heart sank. This wasn't normal. Something wasn't right. I stepped into the living room, noticing a small detail I hadn't expected. The scent of something faintly unpleasant in the air, a mix of old perfume and dust. As I walked past the couch, I caught a glimpse of something under the coffee table, a set of papers. I bent down to pick them up, my curiosity getting the best of me. The first page was an adoption form. My hands tightened around it as I scanned the names. Iris Landon and someone I didn't recognize. Robert Landon. I felt a chill run through me. I hadn't known Iris was planning to adopt, but what really caught my attention was the date. These papers had been filed only a few weeks ago. A part of me wanted to dismiss it, to tell myself I was reading too much into it. But everything in me screamed that this was connected to what had been happening. I could feel the pieces falling into place, but I wasn't ready for what it all meant. Before I could process it further, I heard footsteps coming from behind me. I turned quickly to find Vanessa, Iris's cousin, standing in the doorway. She looked at me with cold, calculating eyes, as if she already knew I'd found something I shouldn't have. "You shouldn't be in here," she said, her voice as calm as ever, like nothing unusual was happening. But it wasn't normal. None of this was. And as I stared at Vanessa, a sinking feeling in my chest told me that whatever was going on with Xavier and Iris, I was just beginning to scratch the surface. Finding those adoption papers made everything click for me, but I still didn't know how to approach it. If you were in my shoes, would you have confronted Iris immediately, or would you have kept looking for more evidence first? I stood there, staring at Vanessa, trying to make sense of everything. The adoption papers, the odd silence in the house, the missing Xavier and Iris. My mind raced. There was so much happening beneath the surface, and I could feel the truth inching closer, just out of reach. But the more I thought about it, the more it became clear that Iris wasn't just controlling Xavier emotionally. She was orchestrating a much larger scheme. Vanessa sighed, rubbing her temples like she was exhausted by the weight of the situation. "I don't want to get involved in all of this," she said, looking away. "But you need to understand that Iris didn't just get pregnant to build a family. She's been planning this for months. She needs Xavier to trust her completely." "Trust her completely," I repeated, my anger rising. "She's been lying to him, manipulating him from the start. And now, an adoption? What the hell is she really doing?" Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "It's all about control, Jose. That's what Iris has always wanted. She wants Xavier to believe they're building a future together. But she's been using his vulnerabilities, his love for her, to secure her place in his life. and his finances. The adoption, the miscarriage, it's all part of the plan. She needed him to think she was the only one who could make him happy, that they were going to have a family. But it wasn't just about the baby. It's about making sure Xavier couldn't escape her grasp. I felt sick. Iris had done this to him for years, slowly taking control, pulling him away from everyone who truly cared for him. She had built a web of lies, and Xavier, for all his love, had walked straight into it. "This is beyond anything I imagined," I muttered, rubbing my hand over my face. I've been so focused on her manipulations, but I didn't realize how far she was willing to go. And now, I have to help him get out of this mess. I turned away, the weight of everything sinking in. I wasn't just worried about Xavier's emotional state, I was worried about his future. He was already in too deep, and I knew Iris wasn't going to let go without a fight. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that if I didn't act soon, Xavier would lose everything: his independence, his freedom, and maybe even his family. "Where is Xavier now?" I asked, the question slipping out before I even realized it. Vanessa hesitated, looking at me like she wasn't sure whether to tell me or not. Finally, she spoke. "They moved." Iris said they needed a break from everything, a chance to get away from the chaos. But honestly, I don't think Xavier has a clue about how deep Iris has gone with all of this. I clenched my fists. I can't believe this. I've been standing on the sidelines, watching him spiral, and I didn't even know how far it went. I need to find him, Vanessa. I need to tell him the truth. "You won't be able to get through to him easily," Vanessa said, her voice almost a warning. "Iris has him wrapped around her finger. She's a master at playing the victim. She'll twist everything you say. But if you're going to do this, you need to be prepared for what comes next." I didn't know what came next, but I did know one thing. I couldn't back down now. I wasn't going to let my son lose everything because he couldn't see through Iris's lies. I didn't care how hard it would be, or how messy it would get. I was going to confront him with the truth, no matter what. "I'll find him," I said, more to myself than to Vanessa. "I'll make him see what's really going on." With that, I turned and headed toward the door, my mind already racing with plans. There was no time to waste. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I knew one thing for sure. Iris had gone too far, and it was time for her to face the consequences of everything she'd done. Vanessa gave me the truth I needed, but I still wasn't sure if I could trust her. She might have been protecting Iris. What would you have done in my situation? Believed Vanessa, or kept pushing to uncover more? I couldn't waste any more time. Everything had been building up to this moment. I knew what I had to do, even if I wasn't entirely prepared for what might happen when I confronted Xavier and Iris. The thought of seeing her again, of having to face Iris Landon, made my stomach churn. But I couldn't let my son keep living in this twisted version of reality she'd created. I left the house without saying another word to Vanessa. She hadn't given me much information about where Xavier and Iris had gone, but I wasn't going to waste time asking her more. I needed to find them myself. The sooner I confronted them, the sooner I could help Xavier break free from whatever grip Iris had on him. I drove around for hours, checking places I thought they might be. The entire time, my mind spun with the pieces of the puzzle I was trying to put together. The adoption papers, the miscarriage, all the manipulation Iris had pulled off. There was no way I was letting her get away with this. Finally, after nearly giving up, I received a message from Xavier. "We're staying at a house in the outskirts of town. Iris wants some privacy, away from the noise." "I'm sorry, Dad. I should have told you earlier." I breathed a sigh of relief. At least now I had a lead. I quickly typed back, "I'm on my way." When I arrived, the house was exactly how I imagined it. Secluded, tucked away behind tall trees. The place seemed to breathe the quiet of isolation, the perfect setting for Iris to have control over Xavier, without interference from anyone else. I knocked on the door, my fist clenched tightly. I could hear footsteps approach from the other side. When the door swung open, I didn't see Xavier first. I saw Iris. She stood there, eyes cold, calculating, her lips pulled into that fake smile she always wore when she was pretending to be the loving wife. But I wasn't fooled. I knew exactly what she was up to. "Dad," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "What a surprise! I wasn't expecting you so soon." I ignored her greeting, stepping past her into the house. Xavier was sitting on the couch, his head down, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His face was pale, his eyes red. It hurt me to see him like this, broken, confused, and stuck between a woman who had twisted his mind and a father who had abandoned him for far too long. "Xavier," I said softly, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice, "we need to talk." He didn't look up at first, but when he did, there was that same lost expression I'd seen so many times before. "Dad, I don't know what to say. Iris, she's been through so much, and I'm trying to support her. I don't know what's real anymore." I could see the confusion in his eyes, the doubt. He was still holding on to the belief that Iris was the victim here, that everything she'd done had been for their future. "That's exactly the problem, Xavier," I said, my voice tightening. "Iris isn't the victim. She's been manipulating you this whole time. The adoption papers, the miscarriage, it's all part of her plan to control you." Xavier's eyes widened in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "I have the documents, Xavier," I said, pulling the papers from my coat. "Iris has been planning this adoption behind your back. She's been using you, all for her own gain. She's trying to lock you down. Emotionally, financially. Everything she's done has been to make sure you couldn't walk away." Iris stepped forward, her face turning pale as she moved between us, blocking Xavier's view of the papers. "Jose, stop this. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to help Xavier. We've been through so much together." I pushed past her, my eyes never leaving Xavier. "Look at the facts, son. She's been lying to you. She's been playing you from the start. And you've been so blinded by love, you never saw it." Xavier looked back and forth between Iris and me, his face a mixture of confusion, anger, and hurt. I could tell he was torn. Part of him still wanted to believe Iris, to hold on to the life they'd built. But another part of him was starting to see the cracks, starting to realize the truth that had been there all along. I don't know who to trust anymore," he muttered, his voice breaking. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought we were building a life together." "You were," I said gently. "But it wasn't your life. It was hers. Everything she did to control you." There was a long silence. It felt like everything was hanging on that moment. And then, just as I thought I might lose him again, I saw it. The flicker of realization in Xavier's eyes. He wasn't sure yet, but he was starting to see the cracks. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "You don't have to do anything alone," I said, stepping closer. "I'm here now, and I'll help you through this." Iris, who had been watching us closely, stepped back, her face hardening. "You think you can just walk in here and take him from me? You don't know what you're messing with, Jose." But it was too late. Xavier was already seeing her for who she truly was, and no matter how much she tried to manipulate him, the truth was starting to break through. Watching my son finally see the truth about Iris wasn't easy. If you were in his position, what would you do? Would you stay with Iris, or would you walk away from the manipulation and lies? The silence in the room was suffocating. Xavier stood there, his hands shaking, eyes darting between Iris and me. I could see the confusion on his face, the pain. He was caught between two worlds, one where everything had been about love, family, and the future, and another where I was telling him that the foundation he'd built with Iris was nothing but a house of cards. "I can't do this anymore, Dad," he muttered, his voice breaking. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration turning to guilt. "I don't know who I am without her. I've spent so long trying to make this work, to believe that we were happy, that this was real. But now, I don't even know who I am anymore." I could hear the weight of his words. This wasn't just about Iris and me. This was about Xavier trying to figure out where he stood in the wreckage of everything he had believed. And I hated that I had to be the one to rip that illusion away from him. But it wasn't just for him. It was for his future, for his life. "You don't have to know who you are right now, Xavier," I said gently, taking a step toward him. "What matters is that you've seen the truth. You can't keep living like this. It's not real. Not with her. Not anymore." Iris finally spoke up, her voice tight with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. You think I'm some villain in all this? I've been nothing but supportive. You're just trying to break us apart because you can't stand seeing us happy. You've never liked me, and now you're using Xavier as a pawn in your game." I could feel my blood boiling, but I held back. She was good, really good at twisting the narrative. She'd done it for years, and I could see the panic rising in her eyes as Xavier continued to stand there, staring at me, lost. "Iris, stop," Xavier finally said, his voice surprisingly firm, though I could see the uncertainty still lingering in his eyes. "I've heard enough." She looked at him as if he had slapped her. Her expression changed from anger to something that almost looked like fear. Real fear for the first time in our entire interaction. She had always been the one in control, and now she was losing it. "Xavier, don't do this," she said, her voice soft but laced with desperation. "You know I love you. I've always loved you. I'm doing this for us, for our future." "I know what you've been doing," Xavier said, his voice shaking now, but with resolve. "You've been controlling me. You've been using me, and I didn't see it until now." I watched as Xavier took a deep breath, the weight of everything sinking in. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a glimpse of the man he used to be, the man who could think for himself, who didn't have to be led by someone else's hands. "I can't stay with you anymore, Iris," he said quietly, but with finality. "I can't live in this lie." Her face twisted in anger, but Xavier didn't back down. He was finally seeing the truth. Seeing what I had always known. Iris was nothing but a manipulator, a user who had built an empire of lies around him. "You can't just walk away from me, Xavier," she spat, stepping closer, her eyes wild. "You think you can just walk away from everything we've built? From everything I've done for you?" "You didn't build anything for me, Iris," Xavier said, his voice shaking with both anger and relief. "You built a prison, and I'm not staying in it anymore." For a moment she stood there, stunned. But then her anger flared, and she took a step toward him, her eyes full of venom. "You'll regret this. You'll see." No one else will ever love you the way I did. No one. I stood in silence, watching them. Xavier's decision wasn't easy. It would never be. But it was his decision, and he had finally made it. He was breaking free from her grip, from her web of lies. "I'll go, Iris," Xavier said, his voice softening just a touch. "But I need time. I need space to figure out what's next. And I'm not doing this alone. I have my dad now." Her face twisted with fury, but she didn't say another word. She just turned and stormed out of the room, her heels clicking on the floor, her presence now a distant echo in Xavier's life. I walked over to Xavier, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, son," I said softly. "It won't be easy, but you're free now. You'll figure out who you are without her." He looked at me, his eyes still filled with a mix of pain and relief. "I don't know where to go from here, Dad, but I'll figure it out. I need to heal." "You will," I said, squeezing his shoulder, "and I'll be right here to help you." I knew it wasn't the end of everything. There was still a long road ahead, and Xavier had a lot of healing to do. But I was proud of him. For the first time in a long time, he had made a decision for himself. A real decision. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward reclaiming his life. When my son decided to leave Iris, I knew it was the right call, but I also knew it wasn't going to be easy. If you were Xavier, would you have left Iris, or would you have tried to fix things with her? The silence after Iris left was suffocating. The room felt empty, as if the air had been sucked out. Xavier stood there, his shoulders slumped, his eyes still clouded with the weight of what had just happened. I could tell that even though he had made the right choice, the emotional toll of it all was starting to settle in. It wasn't easy to walk away from someone you loved, no matter how toxic they were. And Xavier had loved Iris, deeply. He had poured his heart into their relationship, and now he was left with the painful reality of all the ways he had been manipulated. I wanted to say something, to offer him more comfort, but I didn't have the right words. Sometimes there's no comfort to offer. Sometimes the only thing you can do is stand beside someone as they figure it out. And that's what I did. "You're free now, Xavier," I said, my voice rough. "You did the hard part." He didn't answer at first. He just stared ahead, lost in thought. I could tell the guilt was eating at him, even though he knew what he'd done was for the best. I could see it in the way he clenched his fists, the way his eyes flicked over to the door where Iris had just stormed out. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, Dad," he muttered, his voice low. "I've spent so much time with her, so much time trying to make it work. Now it feels like everything's falling apart." I walked over to him, placing a hand on his back. "It's not falling apart, son. It's just being rebuilt. You've been living in a lie for so long. It'll take time, but you'll find your way." "I don't know how to start over," he said, his voice breaking a little. "I've lost so much." "You haven't lost everything," I replied. "You've lost Iris and the life you thought you had with her, but you haven't lost me, and you haven't lost yourself. It's not too late to start fresh. You're not alone in this. I'm right here with you." For the first time in what felt like years, I saw something in Xavier's eyes that had been missing for so long. Hope. It was a small thing, a flicker of light in the middle of all the darkness. But it was there. "I don't know how to move forward without feeling like I failed," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. "You didn't fail, Xavier. You were manipulated. Iris used your love against you. But now that you see the truth, you can start making decisions for yourself." It won't be easy, but you'll figure it out, one step at a time." He nodded slowly, his gaze turning toward the door where Iris had walked out. The house felt emptier now, the air lighter without her. It was almost like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, off both of our shoulders. But the hardest part wasn't over yet. I knew Xavier was going to need time to heal, to process everything. And there would be moments when he doubted himself, when the guilt crept in. But I had to remind him, and myself, that he was strong enough to overcome this. "Let's go for a walk," I said, trying to break the heavy mood. "We can talk, or we don't have to. But I think we both could use some air." He looked at me and smiled faintly, the first genuine smile I'd seen in a long time. "Yeah, that sounds good." We stepped outside together, the cold air biting at our faces. But it felt like a fresh start, like we were finally stepping away from the wreckage and into something new, something better. As we walked down the street, the sound of Iris's departure still echoed in the back of my mind. I knew she wouldn't just disappear. She'd come back with a vengeance, trying to claw her way back into Xavier's life. But that was something we'd face together, whatever it took. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something right. Xavier had taken the first step toward reclaiming his life, and I was going to make sure he didn't walk it alone. "I'm proud of you, son," I said quietly, looking at him as we walked. "This isn't easy, but you're stronger than you think." He glanced up at me, and this time there was no doubt in his eyes. Just resolve. "Thanks, Dad. I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay." We walked in silence for a few more minutes, the weight of everything still there, but a little bit lighter. Iris had done everything she could to control him, to make him feel trapped. But Xavier had broken free, and I knew, no matter what happened next, that we were finally on the path toward something better. After everything that happened, I couldn't help but wonder, can a family truly heal after such betrayal? Do you think my son and I can rebuild what we lost? Or is the damage too deep? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.